Evidence Not Seen, Darlene Deibler Rose. 3 days later, in dugout canoes with coastal oarsmen, the Post, Russell, and I started out for the base camp. When we arrived at the base camp, the supplies were quickly unloaded and stored in the large shed, and the carriers left immediately to return to Oada. We were sorting supplies when we heard loud yodeling, "Woo-hoo!" echoing through the jungle. "The Kapukas," Russell yelled. Pajak and Padapel arrived with the Kapukas, sent along by Idantori, then ran into the clearing in a circular formation, hoo-hooing in a distant two-part harmony. Stopping after a few minutes, they called, "Where is your woman?" Russell pointed to where I had run up on a pile of fallen tree trunks to see them better. They surrounded me like a flock of chattering magpies, examining the whiteness of my skin, shoving up my sleeve to see if the color was the same all the way up. Some gave my arms the pinch test, nodding to one another as though to say, "Yes, see, it has the feel of real flesh." It was a moment pregnant with deep emotion. These dark-skinned, pygmoid people were New Guinea's people, my people. The small kerosene lanterns that had been lighted, so I sat down watching the Kapukas dividing their sweet potatoes into equal piles and placed them in their tins. To the approximately 40 pounds in the tins, Russell and Walter added from our supplies enough to make up a 60-pound starting load. I was intrigued watching them tie their tins with rattan pulled from the nearby trees. The handles they fashioned were tried, then shortened or lengthened until the tins hung from their heads in the most comfortable position for carrying. I asked Russell if 60 pounds were not too much. "No," he explained, "it's a diminishing load as they eat their potatoes." Traveling with them in the Whistle Lakes area, I learned that they are an amazingly strong people, and don't forget, they're accustomed to the mountains, the altitude, and the cold. What a wonderful answer to our carrier problem. With the Dyaks gone and the coastals physically unfit for the rigors of the trail and the cold, we would never have been allowed to make this trip without the help of the Kapukas, who had volunteered to help us weak women. "Russell, what are they saying? They keep looking in our direction." "Oh, they're probably wondering if they'll have to carry that weak, skinny woman before the trip's over." And "Russell," I bleated, "you know how strong I am." Then I saw his grin. What are they really saying? "They're wondering why you aren't wearing glasses like the rest of us. And they've never seen blue eyes before. They're as curious about you as you are about them." As soon as their trail tins were ready for the trail, the Kapukas curled up on the floor to sleep. I crawled in under the mosquito net that Russell had hung for me. I thought that I was much too excited to sleep, but I did. The first day on the trail, the torrential downpour came. We climbed in the driving rain, determined to reach one of the bivouacs, but didn't make it. So we stretched a tarp Viola and I had waterproofed, but it proved no protection against the deluge. It was a miserable night for all of us, and before dawn we were thankful to be on our way. All that long day, thoroughly drenched, not daring to stop lest we become chilled, we kept moving until we reached one of the bivouacs, where we camped for the night. Because it was still raining when we reached the campsite, there was no dry grass to cut, so I snuggled down into the luxury of the much-used dry grass on the earth floor, thinking how wonderful it was to be so comfortable. About midnight, the rain stopped. We found the single log bridges that spanned the gorges to be great time-savers. Each had a piece of rattan for a handrail. Anything that lies dormant in the jungle for even a short time becomes moss-covered and slippery, so I was grateful for the cat's claws on my boots. I reminded the Lord frequently of his promise, "None of his steps shall slide." To fall from these logs would have meant broken bones, possibly death. If the ladders improvised by the Dyaks during their time in New Guinea had rotted, new ones were speedily fashioned, as raw materials were in ample supply. We threw them up against the perpendicular walls of the mountains, saving hours and energy. We changed to dry clothes for sleeping, but the following morning we dressed in our washed but damp, gelid trail clothes of the previous day. This, to me, was the most unpleasant part of the trail. If the Kapukas thought I was lagging behind, they would turn to each other in mock seriousness and say, with a toss of the head in my direction, Look at her, the old thing, no legs on her at all. My youthful pride couldn't ignore their teasing. Of course I could walk faster, which was exactly what they wanted. All the morning of the final day, the carriers, Pajak and Padapelhohide, kept urging me on. Today we will be in Edupa, the first village in Kapuka land. Approaching the top of the final mountain ridge, I could hear the carriers who had gone on ahead yelling, "The women are here! The women are here! They are not spirit people!" Cresting the summit, I looked down into the valley and saw men, women, and children running out of their gardens or hurrying out of their huts. All were heading toward the mountainside. Half of them yodeled, "Whoa!" And then the answering, "Whoa!" echoed back an octave lower from the rest of the crowd. Their excitement was infectious. Those long months of sitting on the coast of Makassar, the separation from Russell, the packing and unpacking, the exhausting trek over the rugged terrain, all these were behind me now. I raised my hands, waving to the people, my cheeks streaked with tears. I started running down the mountainside, singing at the top of my lungs, "I'm home! I'm home!" The first Kapuka women met me halfway up the mountainside, each bearing a gift, a roasted sweet potato. I couldn't hold them all, so I sat down on the grassy slope as they continued to pour their presents on my lap. Then the chieftain of Edupa, Kapila Edupa, came up to me, demanding, "Are you a woman or not?" "Yes, I am," I replied, as he leaned close to scrutinize me carefully, comparing my hat, my clothes, and my boots to Russell's, who had just come over the top of the mountain. Kapila Edupa turned down his lower lip, and with evident mistrust spit out, "No, you are not." "Yes, I am a woman," I declared, and took off my hat and removed the pins, letting my hair tumble over my shoulders. Kapila Edupa dropped his bow and arrows, bit his index finger, clicked his gourd, and exclaimed, "Yes, you are a woman! Truly, no man ever had hair like that." He took hold of a lock, giving it a yank to make sure it was attached to my scalp. The chieftain felt through the pile of sweet potatoes, searching for one that was still warm from the coals of the fire. Finding one, he took the sweet potato in his hand, which had never been washed, not on purpose anyway, rolled it, blew on it to remove the dust and ashes, then peeled it with the paring knife that had grown on the end of his thumb. Rolling it between his hands again, giving it a second blow test, he handed it to me, saying, "Woman, eat the potato." I took the sweet potato from him, and though I had been studying wordless from Russell, and thus knew greetings and understood what Kapila Edupa had just said, I didn't know sufficient to say what was burning inside of me. I said aloud in English, "Someday, by the grace of Almighty God, I will sit down and eat with you anew in my Father's kingdom." I love sweet potatoes. I ate it with relish. I sat encircled by the children and the women until Russell joined me. He was no stranger to them, so after a brief visit we went on with the carriers, with whom I shared my sweet potatoes. Reaching the canoes left on the river's bank, we waited for Viola and Walter, who soon joined us. An official welcome awaited us at Anaratali. Dr. J. Victor de Brun, the Dutch patrol officer, invited us to his quarters for a cup of tea and fried sweet potatoes. It was apparent that he was held in high esteem by the local people. Then Russell took me home, our very first home. It was beautiful to me. There were 2 rooms, a living room and study bedroom with woven bamboo mat walls and floor. The bed was made of pitsawn planks, as was the counter across one side of the bedroom. What a wonderful idea, using isinglass for windows to keep out the cold and let in the view. Russell had chosen a lovely spot for the house, on the hillside, looking across Lake Penei to the tree-clad mountains behind which the sun was just setting. The magnificence of the sunset mirrored on the lake was breathtaking. The whole lovely home was marvelously air-conditioned. The air came through most anywhere. Upkeep was simple. If the roof leaked, we went to the jungle, got another piece of tree bark, and slipped it on. Often, other things could slip in too, like the 3-foot-long forest dragon that was hanging on the wall above my head when I awakened one morning. The kitchen was a lean-to with an open wood fire. I made my own oven from a 5-gallon kerosene tin cut in half lengthwise. With a piece cut from another tin, I devised a rack on which to set my bread pans. When I set my oven on a fire pit made of local clay, I had a functional, custom-made, top-of-the-line, open-fire oven.